or welcome back to Scottish and Scared. I'm your host Stefanie, here to tell you all the weird and wonderful things about my wee country Scotland. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at scottishandscared@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at scottishandscaredpod, or head over to our website scottishandscared.com for all of our links and anything else that you may need. If you wouldn't mind, please rate, review and comment wherever you may be listening. It does help us out a lot. Now, on to the show. Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you all had a great start to your year. If you didn't, don't worry, it will get better. We had a wee sick baby at the start of the year, so we had a great time. Lots of crying, lots of medicine, lots of fighting to take medicine. But he is absolutely grand now, he's doing better, so we are just trying to plod along with him. We then had a house full of sick people, which seems to just be a regular occurrence around here for some reason. I don't know if there's mould in the house or something like that, but everyone seems to be sick all the bloody time. I don't have much to catch you up on, so we might as well just dive on into things. But before we start, I'd like to just say that my neighbour is outside working on his car, and when I say working, I say the term lightly. It looks like he's just trying to break the damn thing. You might hear some clanging and banging. I would do my best to remove it, but yes, if you can hear some banging and clanging about, it's the next door neighbour attempting to fix his car. But anyway, today we're just getting back to the good old ghost stories, and today's spooky tale takes us to Ballechin Woods near Grand Tully, Perthshire. Now in these woods sits a Georgian style estate known as the most haunted home in Scotland. The woods surrounding this estate are also known to be haunted, with many folk tales and ghost stories told by the locals, so it's no surprise that this house has the reputation that it does. The land on which Ballechin House was built had been owned by the Steuart family since the 15th century, and the estate itself was built in 1806 on the site of an old manor home. It was designed by renowned Scottish architect Robert Smart for the family. Now, the home was not always famous for being haunted or cursed. Things were relatively normal otherwise, but in 1834, the home was inherited by Major Robert Steuart from his father, as he was serving in the Indian Army at the time and he wasn't really able to keep up the maintenance of the property. He began renting it out to several different tenants until he returned from India. For 15 years, Robert served and lived in India, and while he was there, he leaned kind of more into his spiritual side. He learned of reincarnation and transmigration, which, if you're not familiar, is the belief that one's essence or soul will be reborn in death into a new human or non-human body. For whatever reason, this concept really resonated with Robert, and he wished to be reborn into the body of his favourite canine companion, a lovely wee black spaniel. He also became a very big dog person. I'm assuming just being lonely in a foreign country, he just enjoyed the companionship of these wee dogs. In 1850, Robert retired from the army and he returned home to the manor, bringing with him a group of dogs that he had acquired while he was in India. He was known locally to be a wee bit of a loner. He never had any visitors and he was unmarried. Honestly, I think he just preferred the company of his dogs, which I think is very relatable, especially in these day and times when the world is absolutely fucking crazy, but that's absolutely fine, don't worry about that. He did, however, hire a housemaid, Sarah, who was much younger than him, and this did cause a lot of gossip around the local town. People believed they were engaged in some kind of relationship, although there's not much evidence for that besides gossip. In 1873, Sarah would pass away at the home. How she died is not really clear. Some sources say suspicious circumstances, others just say that she passed away while at the home. Now, Major Robert would continue to live there alone until his death in 1876. As he had never married or had any children, his dogs and the estate would be inherited by his nephew, John Skinner, who then assumed the name Steuart. John had no intentions of living there with his family, but they did visit the estate quite regularly. Upon hearing the rumours of his uncle's wish to be reincarnated as one of the many dogs that he had acquired, mainly his black spaniel, he allegedly had all of the dogs on the property shot out of fear that his uncle would come back to haunt them. Mad. This didn't seem to matter though, as people believed with no doggy body to come back and inhabit, Major Robert's spirit was forced to then roam the halls of the manor. This is when most of the activity at the manor is said to have begun. The first recorded incident was reported by a maid working at the property in 1876, not long after the passing of Major Robert. It's unclear the incident that she actually witnessed. I couldn't really find a definitive account. But from that point on, John Skinner's family began to experience strange occurrences while at the manor. They reported things such as strange noises, knocking, banging, so loud that it vibrated the walls of the entire house. And as they investigated, they found the origin of the noises coming from empty rooms. At night, when everyone was peacefully tucked in for the night, the family would hear what sounded like volatile arguments coming from somewhere in the house. When they got up to kind of investigate what all the commotion was, the voices would stop or move to another area of the house. They even claimed to hear and feel what they described as an explosion travelling through the house, but could not find the origin of the terrifying noise. One day, John Skinner's wife was at home doing some spring cleaning. While she was in the study formerly used by Major Robert, she claimed the room began to fill with the smell of wet dogs. Seconds after noticing the smell, she said that she felt something brush against her leg, as if a dog had walked past her to the window, which, considering the amount of dog death on this property, I don't think that is too hard to believe. Unsurprisingly, the family were getting worn down by all the bizarre incidents taking place, and so did the staff. The serving governess and maids refused to stay in the house, and when they were required to be in the house for work, they did so in pairs. At a loss on how to solve the supernatural problem that seemed to be plaguing them, John decided to construct a separate wing of the house that his family and the staff could live in while on the property. He even allowed nuns to use the main house as a retreat. In 1892, a priest named Father Hayden was travelling around Scotland and was welcome to stay at the home for a couple of days' rest. He arrived at the home with a warm welcome from the family. They sat at dinner and talked about the places he had visited on his travels. Growing tired, the priest decided to head to bed. I'm unsure what room he was placed in, but during the night he was frightened awake to an orchestra of unnatural sounds such as mournful wails, animal sounds as well, banging and knocking, vibrating the room. Obviously, absolutely terrified, he waited until the family woke in the morning and asked if he could have a room change. The family obliged and weren't exactly surprised by the request. From what I could find, his second night wasn't as eventful as his first, and grateful for the hospitality, he set off on his travels once more. Strangely, the following year, the priest had almost completely forgot about his experience at the house, until he oddly crossed paths with a governess who had served at the house for almost 12 years. The two obviously got talking, and she had told the priest that she too had been staying in the same room as the priest, and she had also heard the barrage of noises during the night. She stuck it out for a while, not wanting to leave the family, until she could no longer deal with the constant jump scares that seemed to plague this house. She reluctantly ended her employment with the family and completely left the area. In 1895, John found himself in the main bedroom of the main house. This room was supposedly where Sarah the maid had passed away. Again, nobody knows how or why, but this is where most of the ghost activity was witnessed. While he was in the room, he took a phone call from his agent, and during the discussion, they were kind of planning out his upcoming trip to London. While this conversation was taking place, the pair were startled by the sound of 3 enormous bangs. Unsure of what the cause of these bangs was, John just abruptly finished his conversation and he hung up the phone. The trip to London would go ahead as planned, and John headed out on his journey, probably relieved to get away from the house for a while. He made it to King Cross Station and was making his way across the busy street when a passing taxi collided with him at speed, killing him instantly. Now, some believe that the loud bangs John and his agent heard prior to his trip were a warning about the trip to London. I am a very superstitious person myself, and I would have cancelled everything if I had heard that while talking about a trip. I wasn't really sure who took over the property at this point. I assume it was inherited by his wife and family, and then it was leased out to a number of different tenants through the years. In 1896, a new young family viewed the home and were completely enamoured by it. They happily signed a year-long lease and they quickly settled in. For the first week or two, they were enjoying their new home. The area was quiet and they could really just relax and unwind, until the family started to hear strange noises such as knocks, footsteps and animal noises. They weren't too concerned, but they did start to notice these things were happening on a daily basis. Noises are scary if they aren't your normal house noises. I think we can all agree that houses have noises. You get used to them after a few months, but when you hear something that's like out of the ordinary, it is very, very startling. The family got used to the noises even though they were still terrified. It wasn't hurting anyone. However, one night while the parents were asleep in bed, they were awoken by a loud thud within the room. When they sat up to investigate, they were shocked to see their bed sheets had been ripped off and were sitting in a pile on the ground. Completely unsettled by this event, the parents tried to convince themselves that the sheets had just fallen off the bed. Nothing weird going on there. Not too long after this, the children would tell stories of seeing a white mist moving from room to room. But the final nail in the coffin for the parents came when the children claimed to have seen the figure of a man standing in the corner of their bedroom watching them sleep. So very, very creepy stuff. Noises and moving sheets are one thing, but to think that there is a man or any kind of ghostly figure watching your children sleep at night, that is your cue to leave. So after only 11 weeks at the property, the family decided to cut their lease short and move on to somewhere a bit more cosy and homey. In 1897, the home caught the attention of John Crichton Steuart, 3rd Marquis of Bute. He, in his own right, is a very interesting man, but what brought him to Ballechin House was his interest into the occult and the paranormal. He had come into contact with a priest who had told him stories of Ballechin House and how he thought it was haunted. Now, whether that was the priest that had the night in the room with the noises and the animal noises, I'm not quite sure. I think that most sources just say a priest. During this time, Steuart was involved with the Society for Physical Research and was good friends with the notorious Ada Goodrich Freer, who was also a member of the society. Now, this Society for Physical Research were a non-profit organisation whose goal was to investigate and document activity that today we would deem as paranormal. It was formed in 1882, so it was probably one of the first ghost hunting groups of its time, if you will. So John and Ada got together and discussed the possibility of conducting an investigation into this notorious haunting. John put forward that he would rent out the property for 4 months and allow Ada to oversee any investigation that took place. Her plan was to invite a total of 35 guests to stay for a night in the house and record any unusual goings-on in a notebook that would be provided for them. None of the guests were told the property was haunted, but let's be really real here, people. If you were invited to stay at a property which is known locally to be haunted, the people inviting you are from the Society of Physical Research and they gave you wee notepads to write down anything strange that may happen to you while you were there. You probably already think that this place is haunted. Is that fair? There was a book published in 1899 by both Crichton Steuart and Freer on their findings. We'll touch on that later. Most of the accounts that I'm about to talk to come from that book. Now, during the investigation, most of the guests claimed to experience auditory phenomena, such as voices, footsteps, bangs, thuds, and some of them said that they even heard voices speaking prayer, which is kind of in line with what previous tenants had experienced while at the home. Various apparitions were seen as well. They claimed to have seen the figure of a hunchback limping up the home's main staircase, a hand that had no body and was seen holding a crucifix at the bottom of a guest's bed. The ghostly apparition of a black spaniel was also seen, along with a thumping, which kind of sounded like a dog's tail hitting off a nearby door. Following that, a guest claimed to have been awoken in the night by the sound of a dog whining somewhere in the room. She lit a candle trying to see where the sound was coming from and shockingly seen a pair of disembodied paws on top of the bedroom dresser. The staff working at the home during the investigation also had some strange experiences. One of the maids working at the time claimed that she had seen the upper half of a woman suspended in midair. Before she could interact with the apparition, it disappeared into thin air. Many different methods of investigation were used by the professionals during this time at the home, but the main one was Ouija boards. One night, the lead investigators gathered their guests in one of the main rooms to conduct a Ouija board session. For a while, nothing crazy happened, but then they received a strange message. While conversing with the other world, they were instructed by spirit to visit the nearby glen in the dead of night. In the cover of darkness, the group made their way to the glen to see what they could uncover, and when they arrived, they were struck by the silence and eerie atmosphere, and right before their eyes, the apparition of a ghostly nun appeared. She moved across the grass, slowly, almost floating, as the group watched her every move. They described her appearance as striking, youthful, with long dark hair flowing down over her shroud. She seemed upset, with tears rolling down her pale cold cheeks, and seemed to be conversing with a presence unseen to the group. She would be seen on several occasions at the Glen by different members of this group, but they weren't able to figure out why she was there or who she was in connection with the house. Not long after the lease was up and the investigation was closed, an article appeared in the Times titled "On the Trail of a Ghost." This article was written by J. Callender Ross, who had spent time at Ballechin himself. Now, he completely trashed the investigation, calling it repulsive and fraudulent. He claimed that during his stay, nothing supernatural or anything out of the ordinary took place. Anything that did happen was completely explainable in his eyes. He even took shots at Eva Freer, the lead investigator, saying simply because she is a lady and because she had her duties as hostess to attend to, she is unfit to carry out the actual work of investigating the phenomena in question. Hear that, ladies? We are apparently not able to multitask and are apparently unfit to conduct paranormal investigations. I do think it's just a comment on the times this was carried out in, as I don't think women were allowed mortgages, let alone converse with the other world, so it's not that serious. Anywho, off the back of this damning article, the Society of Physical Research weren't too impressed by Freer and the negative publicity it was bringing to their door, so they let her go. One of the founding members of the society had also been at Ballechin during the investigation, and this is what he had decided, quote, that there was no such evidence as could justify us in giving the results of the inquiry a place in our proceedings, end quote. The society also came under fire by the owners of Ballechin, as they actually had no idea that that was their intentions when they leased the home to them. As you can imagine, they were not happy about the image that was being portrayed of the property. They were actively trying to lease it out. The family became very famous in the area as owning the most haunted home in Scotland. Although I think in this day and age, you would make an absolute killing owning a home with that reputation. I think back then it was just a big no-no. Like I said earlier, there was a book published in 1899 titled The Alleged Haunting of B House. It was co-written by Crichton, Steuart and Freer. The book is made up of various journal entries, notes and incident reports from the time of the investigation, collected from guest staff and Freer herself. There was a lot of discussion on whether the pair should even release it after the article came out in the Times, but obviously believed in what they had collected enough to go ahead and do it anyway. I'm sure you can read or purchase a print version of this book online if you would like to have a wee look. Even if it is a load of rubbish, it's still very interesting to read. There's diagrams of the house, there's illustrations of the apparitions people claim to have seen, so it's definitely worth a wee gander. The famous house itself eventually fell into disrepair and mostly uninhabited by 1932. The biggest part of the house had been demolished by 1963 following a fire that tore through the building, leaving only the former servants' quarters and outbuildings. The fire was particularly devastating, as among the things that were lost were irreplaceable furniture and art that had been collected by generations of the Steuart family, so that is very sad. Not much is known of Ballechin House today. Honestly, I had never heard of it, so I was completely shocked to hear its title of Scotland's most haunted house. If you've ever heard of this place or have any stories of your own, please let me know. Who knows why it is so haunted? Maybe it was the 20 dogs that were innocently shot down for no reason. Or maybe it was the young maid Sarah, dying under mysterious circumstances. Whatever the case may be, I thoroughly enjoyed learning about this place and its history, and I hope you did too. That's all I have for you today, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Stay weird, stay scared. Bye.